We're back, Alphas.
We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Hi there, Alphas. During the holiday season, the Tango Alpha Lima podcast team is taking a break. Woo! Need a break. But while we're gone, we do have a little bonus content for you.
So we've looked back at all the things we've done during season 6, and we've come up with a list of our top 6 most impactful guests from 2025. And that was not easy. It really was difficult.
There were so many great guests. But we'll be re-releasing those interviews this week. So if you haven't already subscribed to Tango Alpha Lima on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, don't miss our countdown. We've got you covered.
So anytime you go to interview someone who does sleep studies, you kind of worry it's going to be a bit of a snooze. But Dr. Tina Burke, Associate Director at Behavioral Biology Branch and a sleep research scientist at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, was incredible. Our alphas didn't sleep on this one either. It was one of our high performing episodes. It was one of the top downloaded episodes of 2025. So it turns out that a lot of folks want to know how sleep affects wellness and to learn better sleep habits. Did either of you make any changes to your sleep routine after our chat with Dr. Burke?
I started sleeping less.
As a form of counter protest.
I'm going to go back and listen to this episode just so I can get my sleep back on track.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think she just reaffirmed all of the sleep health things I'd learned over time and why it's important. I know, I suffer from insomnia a lot, but I found this episode very beneficial. So I'm thankful that this was made our replay this season.
Yeah, me too. I think for me personally, I go through waves of things going really well sleep-wise and then things not. And I got to change it up. But, it's luckily I've been able to control it without having to take anything. That's kind of the goal for me with everything, is to learn how to manage it in a way. And the only way you can really do that is with information. So Alphas, if you want to know more about this episode, you need to come check it out. Stick around after the break. We enter our dream sequence and revisit episode 254 for our interview with Dr. Tina Burke.
Family and community engagement. The American Legion meets the unique needs of local communities. We are veterans strengthening America. We are the American Legion.
Hey Alphas, today we are joined by Dr. Tina Burke, Associate Director of the Behavioral Biology Branch and a sleep research scientist at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, occasional skedaddler, and wearer of cool yellow glasses. Welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thanks for a wonderful welcome.
Of course.
Hey, Dr. Burke, it's a pleasure to have you join us. And in preparation for this show, actually, it's not in preparation. It's an absolute coincidence. I had my first sleep consultation last week, and I'm actually have a 9:15 p.m. showtime for my first phase of my sleep study tonight. So I couldn't have planned it. I'm excited to learn from you today as I'm trying to unpack the things that are happening when I sleep and how I may be able to do it better. And so certainly looking forward to hearing that from you today. But your journey into sleep research is quite fascinating. So what was it that sparked your interest into understanding sleep and circadian rhythms, and how did that lead you into military-focused research that you do now?
Yeah, it's a quite interesting journey. I feel like as most people, similar to kind of what you're demonstrating right now, is everybody sleeps. Even most species all have some form of sleep or posturing that is sleep-like. And so it makes it easier for my job sometimes to actually be able to connect and communicate with people, because just like everybody poops, everybody sleeps, or sometimes they have a different relationship with sleep. I shouldn't always.
Sometimes at the same time.
I know poop and sleeping together the dynamic combo. Um, and so it's interesting for me when I was in high school, I definitely liked this idea of consciousness, and I loved dreaming. I loved what I saw in my dreams, what I felt like I had the power over in my dreams, and just the creativity of it. And I didn't really know how that was a career or anything like that. And I started my kind of scholastic journey not really knowing what I wanted to do, as I'm sure most new college students do. And I kind of started with a pre-med degree, a psychology degree, and a biology degree as my like major focuses. Psychology won out with more kind of the minors and the med and biology side, but I still really loved how that was connected. And I had an opportunity at Kent State University to really engage in research. And so I looked at research in animals with immunology and learning, and then in humans as well with how humans learn, and then some stress research and how people respond to stressful situations. And one of the things that I found very passionate was really thinking about how learning at a collegiate level or more in-depth information was linked, but I still always loved sleep. And so when I finished my degree for my bachelor's, I was really talking to one of my mentors who was in learning, and I was like, hey, I really want to link what we're doing with how college students learn to then how do we link that with their sleep? Because I really think, I know for me, sleep is important for my learning. And I don't see a lot of research in this particular area of learning for more complex ideas with sleep. And it just happened that my advisor at the time, her name is Catherine Rawson, she's like, oh, I went to the school for graduate school at the University of Colorado Boulder. There's this guy there that I know. His name's Ken Wright, and I think he's doing what you want. And I went out to Colorado and instantly fell in love with probably the community first, because the environment is absolutely fantastic, and I am definitely a very like huggy person. I love stranger hugs. I don't know if you can get those vibes from me, but man, that was the place that I wanted to be.
A lot of hugs out there in Colorado.
I know, love it. And
Might be the ones where Georgia went. We used to do it a lot down here, but we don't anymore.
It's a very
I guess
southern
they all
thing for sure.
migrated.
I'm also from Ohio, so I guess I also have like the Midwest hug as well. So like it's just like transitioning to the different types of hugs. I feel like I've brought more hugging to the East Coast. That's also one of my
nice. It's a good import.
And so when I then met Kenneth Wright, he was so passionate about just teaching. So as a mentor, I always tease him because I was like, man, you have served the best Kool-Aid I have ever drank. Because literally his passion for research, and specifically sleep research, and something that at that time had no idea what circadian or internal biological time was. And he just made it sound like it was the sexiest thing. And if you didn't want to do research on it, like, it's like, man, you got to get with the times. So it's a nice circadian pun for you guys too. And I literally, through just that experience kind of with him and really learning from someone, even wanting to kind of like do learning research, put me on this different path and trajectory to learn different intricacies about sleep that I didn't know. And it just happened as I kind of progressed throughout my career. I really, my husband at the time, he had been a professional cyclist, and like we're kind of staying in the area for him to finish his career, and he finally retired, and I was like, all right, my turn again. And so I got in contact with a lot of my friends in the community, and a lot of my friends had kind of gone on military paths that I had gone to graduate school with. So a couple of them kind of went to the Navy side of the house. And I happened to have a friend who had been enlisted, and I was like, hey, I really want to learn about neuroimaging and how I can bring like the circadian system to the military, because I haven't really heard about that. Are you aware of any positions? And she literally was like, I have a job right now for you. Can you come come from Colorado in 2 weeks? And the job is yours. And that was history of just an amazing happenstance of
So you
connecting
moved
with my
from
friends.
Colorado
I did.
to and where are you now?
I am in Silver Spring, Maryland, is where
Oh,
Rare is located. So I had the privilege of having the flexibility to just kind of get up and move, and it's been one of the best decisions of my life. And it's so interesting as well, like our community, like I feel like we've also, because we have so many of the same sleep people, and in the community, we've also helped to bring tri-service efforts for the military as well together.
Well, how do you feel now that you're an expert?
That I it's so interesting. I would say I know more than most, but I always know that there's always more to learn. So so I always like to dance that line because it's interesting. Every person has such a unique story, and there's a lot of things that we can provide, and then sometimes everything can be tailored to kind of the unique individual as well. So I always would say, like, I might be considered an expert, but there's always an opportunity to learn more.
Well, so I'm really excited to be able to talk with you today because sleep has been a long time struggle for me. I'm Stacy, by the way. Nice to meet you, Dr. Burke. It's been about 20 years that I was, maybe even more than that now. Yeah, more than that I was hit by my first roadside bomb and had my first TBI. But since then, over the course of many years, that's when my sleep struggles really began, and have developed lesions because of TBI. And of course, the side effects of post-traumatic stress, like so many other combat veterans, the side effects of PTSD impact sleep, behavioral sleep disorders, things like that. For me, a lot in the initial days of still being deployed and in the years ensuing after my combat deployments, my major problem was it wasn't that I hadn't had behavioral conditioning around sleeping that I had tried to readdress in those times. It was like, well, in combat, you can't really get around staying up around the clock. It's just how your body gets conditioned to doing it. Adrenaline spikes and you just can't sleep. And that is something that I couldn't overcome in the years after combat. And the initial way to overcome that was pharmaceuticals and using things like Ambien. And in the long term, that was what wasn't going to be the solution. So they transitioned to melatonin, which was like, yeah, not going to work for me. And so it just became a real problem. And it was funny because I was in my research looking over a lot of the articles and things that you had developed, and you have these wonderful PDFs and things. And ironically, I came up with this sort of self-meditation thing where I visualized this rock that I held in my hand, and it was a 3-sided rock, flat on eye sides, and it had this ridge, and I could visualize each and every ridge, and I could feel its heft and how cool it was. And anyway, it wouldn't let me go back to sleep because I had so much adrenaline constantly spiking through my system, but it did help me focus on my breathing and reorient myself. And anyway, I guess it's like meditation, and you talk about meditation, you talk about breathing. And for so many of us folks who deal with insomnia, that's a big part one of the practices you mentioned. So I've dealt with this for 20-ish years. Sleep struggles are a problem, and I'm tired, pun intended. But this is common for veterans like myself. What are some of the things that you recommend for alphas like me who are struggling and maybe an ongoing struggle for decades? What do you got? Help us, Doc.
Well,
save her.
I I very much empathize with your struggle, and it's interesting because each person is unique, but there oftentimes can be very common threads, especially I would presume in the alpha community we see a lot in veterans populations, and even folks who are just in the military community, or a lot of the support staff as well. Because like you were saying, similar to first responders, a lot of our medical providers, part of your job is the sleep loss. And there's parts that are unavoidable, and there are stressful things with it. And sometimes we don't always take into account the grace of the training that that type of environment provides, let alone kind of your discussions of the things like traumatic brain injury that can, in and of itself, just impact your sleep from a biological perspective. So even our folks like who might be our football players or soccer players who have been having things like the ball hit their head or collisions can then have a greater prevalence of insomnia even later, just because of that. And if you look at a lot of our veterans and even some folks in our service members who have had these experiences, it's kind of like adding these factors or conditions that can contribute as well in an additive way to what might be linking to sleep problems. And of course, when you try to figure out what might be causing issues with sleep, it can kind of be dependent on really what the issues in the root causes. Because sometimes if it is something like you're talking about a traumatic brain injury, there's some actual physiology in terms of there's damage, and sometimes you can see different neural circuitry that can impact how and why you sleep. But even without that, a lot of what you describe are common things that we tend to hear. And folks that I know tend to report feelings of kind of stress around their sleep loss. And sometimes we can see that more in folks who report insomnia. There are different things that are traditionally from a medical side of the house recommended. Sometimes you can use pharmaceuticals like you described. And then there can also be different interventions like cognitive behavioral therapy, trying to change those signalings. And then there can sometimes be these other interventional solutions like you're talking about, tactical breathing or meditation, in addition to just trying to get your body a different rhythm or routine. It's interesting because sometimes I get to go and collect saliva from our service members, and I'm like, I need you to spit in this tube. And they're like, I don't have saliva. I can't do it for you, Dr. Burke. And one of the things that I do is I have them do a visual exercise of just kind of closing your eyes, and we visualize a very yellow lemon. We cut that lemon in half, and then we quarter it. And then when you bite on it, you then salivate because of this visual imagery. And it's kind of like this old school Pavlov's dog. I give you a cue and you react to it. And you use that as a great example of how me, as just this external person to you, can elicit a physiological response because of a behavior that you've become predicted to have when presented with a specific cue. And we tend to try to recommend as well, when you're having issues with insomnia or sleeping, trying to get a ritualized routine in order to try to do the same thing. So if you can get a routine that can start serving for your body as a cue to start transitioning to bedtime, then you can try to help elicit that same type of physiological response. So decreasing things like your stress hormone activation, things like cortisol, and like how you're talking about the adrenaline surge, to try and dampen that down. And then it's interesting when we think of meditation and tactical breathing, it really is a physiological process. So when we engage in a lot of those breathing techniques, it activates a part of our autonomic nervous system called the parasympathetic portion of your autonomic nervous system, which is like the rest and digest piece. And so when you start engaging in those breathing techniques, it actually starts kind of forcing that system online. So removing from the run, the fight or flight response, to try and activate that system, which helps bring down heart rate, helps decrease that stress response. but you also have to have patience that takes a little time to transition. And sometimes when we talk about those routine and those tactics, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough time to kind of have that transition and give ourselves solid cues. Because it's interesting, sometimes I'll talk to folks. I even just talk to someone in my lab who's one of our research assistants, and he's like, "Oh, Dr. Burke, I'm starting to like change the backlight on my screen so it's less blue." And then right next to his screen was a giant can that was a Monster can with lots of caffeine in it. And I was just like, I am glad that you're trying to use techniques that you're learning, but that caffeine, which 6 hours before bed can impact your sleep, that might make that process or the cues that you're trying to do with your lighting not work as well as you might intend. So sometimes when folks are like, "Oh, that's not quite right for me," I'm like, "Oh, there may also be just like other things in your routine
Like
that you might not
monsters.
like." Monsters. It's
Monsters keep me
interesting.
awake at night too.
That is so. I'm gonna steal that for later. That's a great
It's
joke.
yours. It's
I
all
know.
yours.
Sorry.
I forget my jokes as soon as I
like,
say them. So
I know. No copyright on that one.
You forget them because they're
not.
not funny, Joe, most of the time.
I remember all those insults though. I write them down and I read them out loud to myself
in your
before I
back
go to
pocket, my
sleep.
friend.
but of course there are these things that sometimes we might not recognize, and so it's more trying to also provide an education to say like you're doing great on this, but you might not notice it. Like another great common example, because nighttime awakenings happen very, very frequently, and our bodies are actually designed to kind of rotate in and out of these kind of cycles. But a lot of times we're not consciously aware. And some of my folks who might wake up and have to go to the bathroom or something like that, they go into the bathroom, and I don't know if it's all bathrooms or if it's just mine. Like the lights that are in the bathroom are the brightest lights on the planet, so you can see like the microscopic view of your face, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I get up and go to the bathroom, I lay back down, I can't go to sleep." But I was like, "It's because you just," I was like, "because you shined a giant light in your eyes." And I'm like, "I'm so sorry, it's taking you a long time to go to
You're
sleep."
like washing your hands, trying not to make eye contact with yourself, like you're
I
walking to a
know,
grocery
I
store or
know.
something.
I just use a nightlight. Like I don't have a light switch I turn
I
on
love
anymore.
it.
I just have a night.
I love it. Write that down, and we will start reminding people. But those are the things, like the first approach that I always talk about is like, let's go through what your routine is, and then just from practice, I know I get used to being like, what is your kitchen light situation looking like at like 9 o'clock at night? Like what are those things? But again, like you talking about your visual imagery, because a lot of folks who might have more intrusive thoughts, especially if they like wait till the end of the night, that's the first time you actually have quiet time to be with your own internal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
To try to help distract yourself from those intrusive thoughts, one, you can kind of write them down or try to get them out of your body. But exactly what you're saying is a tactic that we teach, which is to use visual imagery while also doing a breathing technique in order to try and engage more of those processes to focus on that one thing to make the breathing or meditation more effective. So you doing that, like self-starting that is amazing, and I'm glad it's working because it should work. But again, like sometimes people don't know those things or haven't been presented with that as an option. So I'm so glad that you kind of came across that yourself.
And learn not to look at the version of you stuck in the mirror dimension in the middle of the night.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do what you were as a kid. Stare at yourself in the dark and say Bloody Mary 3 times. You don't want to do that. Not a night.
So on my end, I just want to first of all say thank you so much for talking with us. And I just was recently invited to do a sleep improvement program with the Simplify and America's Fund.
Okay.
And I'm really looking forward to that. They've done some cool stuff, but and my sleep is generally good for a one-legged guy who lost a leg in war. I feel like it's not bad. But I don't want to wait until I'm in crisis mode before learning about it.
Yeah.
And that's so for me, your baseline, your bottom should not be something that you let yourself get close to when you have control over it, because you're not always going to have that.
Yeah.
So while my sleep is good, I'm trying to learn a little bit more. And they sent me this little packet with like, now I could never wear the thing that like covers my eyes, because in my mind, like as soon as I put that thing on, somebody's going to break in the house or
Mhm.
something, and it's just going to be one more. But I say that because they've also got a thing to help track sleep. There's even the Pokemon Go has a thing that tracks your sleep.
Yeah.
Like my daughter was talking about it. Is like it'll help you like hatch the eggs or something. But my point is technology is increasingly intertwined with our sleep.
Mhm.
I mean, almost everybody, even if you read a book, generally you're doing it on your phone as you go to sleep. It's real. It's, then you get, your buddy Delvin sends you something on Instagram, and the next thing you know, you're scrolling through. So how do we leverage technology in a positive way to improve our sleep? Or what are some potential pitfalls that we should be aware of? And how can we use some of this technology for good instead of distractions? Because I think we're at a point now where it's hard to just tell someone, now take your phone and plug it in across the room, because no one is realistically going to do that, even though they should. I agree 100%.
I mean, there's the small wins. Like, I'd love to be myself as a big beefy person that I could just lift like 200 pounds. I know that's not true, and I probably couldn't lift 100 pounds, but I could start at 15 and start start small
Yeah.
steps and gain more strength. And your sleep and changes with that is no different. And when I think of technology, because I agree, like especially with how we use technology right now, it's not always easy for me to be like, no electronics in the room, even though I also love to say that. I also try and think of what are the quick wins, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, if your phone is with you, there's night shift mode, and you can change the color of the background lighting, because it's so weird. Our eyes see better. Like our visual system is much more attuned and acute, as well as our internal timing system, to blue light. And so, of course, when you have some of a lot of our old e-readers, when you're watching very expensive TVs, if anyone's getting ready for the Super Bowl, we are used to having these really high definition pictures with bright light on there to help us see. And so some of the times as you bring that type of technology, because most of these technologies that we see from that aspect for entertainment or social media tends to have light associated with it, and so it's more trying to mediate the light aspects of it than necessarily some of the other keys. Although notifications, of course, dealing with social media as a stressor 15 years ago was very different than what we have to mediate as a stressor today. Of course, like scrolling and different activation, if you read or watch something that's charged. And so a lot of our devices now are starting to get like these sleep modes and things like that to try to limit the notification. So trying to change how you are notified can be a good step. Changing the lighting. So if you have a TV in your bedroom, which I do not recommend, but if you happen to have one in there, or you have a bed partner that needs to watch that, try and change the gain on it. So and just the lighting structure, so it's more of this kind of like red sepia tone. A lot of our phone devices or things like our tablets and our computers also have that kind of night shift type mode where you can change the color of your device.
And do not disturb mode.
Yeah, yeah.
But alternatively, sometimes you just want to watch Reacher and have
Yes.
Alan Richardson, and hold you while you go to sleep.
That's true. That's true.
Well,
And so
these are things we were very much aware of, because I was a helicopter pilot in the Army.
oh, okay.
So, light sensitivity and preparations
Yeah,
for night flying and ops
yeah.
was a big deal. But it was also the first time that I heard the word circadian rhythm. And oh, that's fun to say.
Yeah.
I
What
thought it was
is
a
that?
cricket.
And and how does that apply, to me being an aviator and being able to be at my optimal performance, because we're
Yeah.
constantly shifting our schedules to be able to
Mhm.
fly, disrupting, our sleep sequence, or we always get made fun of because of, the downtime that we had to have and the rest before we went and got into the aircraft, because you don't want a tired Apache pilot shooting missiles downrange. So I'm interested to hear about your thoughts and kind of maybe even the questions that you're asking, or maybe some insights about circadian rhythm. What does the research say about how these disruptions impact the body over time, especially for, folks like us that are having to beat our rhythms up all the time?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we have these two kind of primary systems that work together. So we have that internal timing system, which is interesting. A lot of times I make that akin to if you had like a watch that you're wearing or you're using your phone. I always ask the question, like, if you didn't have your phone or watch, how many of you would get to work on time or do what you need to? And most of the time it's not. So that internal timing system is really a way for us to predict our environment. Um, so help us have physiological signals to help us signal sleep, how to signal us to be awake. And that complements kind of what we consider the other primary system, our sleep need or our sleep drive. So how long you've been awake, you're kind of getting a lot of metabolic waste and things like that over time, which contributes to this sleep need. And so we tend to be able to really kind of feel these things in terms of like our sleep need, but sometimes it's harder to decouple how these two systems work in harmony together until we start working. Of course, like when we look at our service members who have round the clock operations, or we have folks that are even doing something like transmeridian travel, and then we hear about this decoupling, but we call it jet lag. And so our circadian system, of course, is really designed as this kind of, it's an approximate 24 hour, so circa around DN day, that's approximate 24 cycle that's really built into our genes. But as it is intended to be a predictor of your environment, it's also exceptionally adaptable. Because it wants to be able to be there to help you predict and anticipate, like, should I be eating now? Yes. All right. I'm going to start having signaling cues so that I can eat my food, digest that more quickly. Is it getting time to go to sleep? I start secreting my endogenous or internal melatonin to help facilitate that kind of tiredness and transition into sleep at night. But when we do transmeridian travel, because that circadian system can really only adapt to about 1 hour time change a day, is that when that decouples, either for, say, shift workers or transmeridian travel, then we have these cues that are signaling our body that aren't as efficient. And then if you have rotating schedules on top of that, we tend to see like, okay, well, my body isn't predicting that I should be eating at 3 a.m. in the morning, but I'm on a 24-hour operation and I'm starving. And we found in some of our research studies in the sleep community, of course, that when doing that, one, your body's like, ooh, like I'm in a high stress environment, obviously, because I'm up for 24 hours. I need really fast digestible sugar. So I really want that bag of Cheetos or something that I can just digest easily. But then we don't necessarily have the physiological processes that might be catching up to actually efficiently like break down those foods so that you can get the energy from it. It's like, oh, I'm going to store that for you as fat. And then we see a lot of our shift workers then that start leading to having these kind of pre-diabetic profiles. They're more inclined to have cardiovascular risk and things like that. And so I think when you talk about how do you help folks who've kind of been dysregulated, is really trying to start, because of how plastic and how much that circadian system wants to adapt, wants to predict, is to start giving cues. And really the biggest cue for that system is light, either the presence or absence thereof. So in the morning, walking outside, getting a big dose of that bright morning sunshine. And then, of course, as your external environment, as you're getting closer to sunset, also having your internal environment. So in your house, if it's getting dark outside, this is a great plan for you to start saying, oh, hey, instead of having my bright kitchen lights on, maybe I should be using a lamp. And so that you can also start mimicking that. And then that internal timing system for your circadian system can help have that natural rise in your melatonin to try and help more easily with the transition to sleep. Of course, again, different recommendations. If you're traveling, you can do so more acutely to try and be like shifting that system earlier or later. Sometimes if someone won't have enough time to appropriately mitigate the jet lag just through natural transition, sometimes it's not best to shift if you're only going to be there for 24 hours or a day.
I love LAMP.
Lamps.
Well, I think
Yes.
that's such great insight, and I
Yeah.
think what it says to me is that our rhythms are like it wants to get into its natural kind of correspondence, and
Yeah.
we have these things that take us out of it and take it away. But just by being aware, and recognizing that there's some things that we can do to mitigate it.
Mhm.
So if we have to go to that shift work or we have to take a big jump, just recognize that it's going to affect you, but with a little preventative, you can minimize the impact to your sleep.
Absolutely.
Well, Doc, we really appreciate all your insights. And for all you alphas out there, Doc, where can they find some of this information? Where should they go?
Yeah, so on our Walter Reed Army Institute of Research homepage, we actually have a resources page, which I can send the link. It's probably very, very long for me to actually say out loud, but happy to provide that. And it has, especially for our folks who are active duty right now, and even not, it actually translates to everyone. But it's especially a lot of our resources are focused on folks who are undergoing stressful situations, which I'm aware that could be more than just our service members at this moment in time, as well engaging in jet travel, how to appropriately use caffeine. A lot of times when people say, "Oh, melatonin is not for me," my knee-jerk response is like, "You might not be using it right." There's how to use melatonin on there, how to mitigate jet lag, and so there's also just some sleep leadership trainings that we try in order to use to kind of train our folks earlier on how to kind of talk about sleep, how to mitigate the impacts of fatigue if you can't avoid sleep loss, which again can be quite frequent. But then when you have control of your sleep, which Joe, I appreciate your words. So when you have control, what can you do to ensure that the sleep that you're getting is higher quality and more restorative for you? Or even how to do something like sleep banked to try to help if you know you're going to be going on a series of time where you're not going to get as much sleep as you want, or if even you might be anticipating a stressful event where you might not get the sleep that you want. How can you do some tactics to improve the sleep leading up to that, to try and be a little bit more protective so that you're not as fatigued while you're engaging in the activity?
I personally just want to be ready when they add it to the Olympics. Competitive sleeping is something that I feel like I could be very strong
Been training
at.
your whole life for
Yeah.
that one, Joe.
Yeah.
I spend at least 6 hours a day training.
Olympian
So you
alphas,
better
we're gonna
fight me
have
for that medal for there. It's like I feel like I could win.
we're gonna have that website in our show notes along with the social media handles. So be sure to check that out. Doc, it's been such a wonderful experience chatting with you, and look forward to digging a little deeper into all those resources.
Yeah,
Love
Dr.
it.
Burke, thank you so much for joining us for the great conversation. I feel ready for my sleep study tonight. Alphas, stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
Welcome back, Alphas. We're keeping things short and sweet on the countdown, so there's no scuttlebutt today. But thanks for taking the trip down memory lane with us.
We really hope you guys enjoyed the episode. On behalf of the entire Tango Alpha Lima podcast team, we hope you're enjoying time with your loved ones during the holiday season.
If you miss us during the holidays, which I know you are, you can always subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us guest and mail recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. So long.
So long.
Bye.